10-year-old Lindsey was a lively little girl who had moved from Tennessee to a small Washington town of Mcleary in Grays Harbour. It was a new beginning after Lindsey's parents had split up. Melissa was her mother and Josh was Lindsey's brother, who was slightly older. On the 25th of June 2009, Lindsey told her mother, Melissa, that she felt something really bad was going to happen to her. When her mother had asked what, Lindsey said she didn't know. She just had a really bad feeling. This is something Melissa has never forgotten. The very next day, on the evening of Friday of June the 26th, 10-year-old Lindsey and her brother Josh were walking the short distance to Lindsey's friend's house. As they were walking, Lindsey and her brother started arguing over a bike. A family friend who was nearby heard them arguing and told Josh to go on back home. Lindsey made it to Michaela's house, hoping that her friend would be able to stay the night. However, Michaela wasn't able to, and Lindsey started her walk back home, which now would have only been 7 or 8 blocks away. By the time she had left her friend's home, it was 9:30 p.m. Lindsey's mum expected to see her walk through the door any minute, but started getting worried when time was passing. She rang to check when she left Michaela's house, and now it was getting dark. By 11 p.m, Melissa made the agonising call to Grays Harbour County Sheriff's Office to report her child missing. Now, as it was a safe area and nothing ever really went on, action wasn't taken immediately. But in the end, when it seemed like Lindsey wasn't home still, the police department and the volunteer firemen, including Melissa and family and friends, all searched the area with no luck. The next 10 days ended up with over 240 people, including ground searches, search and rescue teams, dogs and people on horseback. Also, police divers searched the local waterways. So pretty much the entire population of Mcleary, which was 1,500 people, all got involved. Investigators had made contact with every resident on the route that Lindsey had taken to Michaela's house. Police had ruled out that she had run away, as she had left her phone and money at home, so this led to the fact that she might have been abducted. The pain poor Melissa's mum must have been in only reminded her of a couple of incidents that happened just a week earlier before she went missing, and that was that Lindsey and a friend went to the park, and when they had gone to the bathroom, a man walked in on them and stared at them, but he then left and took off on a bike. The other incident was that Lindsey and a friend, not sure if it was Michaela or not, but both were walking along and they said that someone in a white car was following them. Investigators had questioned so many people, but 2 men stood out and it piqued the interest of the investigators. They did pick up surveillance at a gas station of a white vehicle close to when Lindsey disappeared, but that was it. So going back to the 2 men that were questioned, one stayed at a house near Maple Street where Lindsey walked home. So the conversation the police had with him was that he basically didn't know Lindsey or seen her or had never left the house that night. The problem was, when police checked further, this man who has remained unnamed, through witnesses and other evidence, proved that the man that they had talked to had lied about his whereabouts at 9:30 in the evening. Lindsey went missing. Tim Hartman, a businessman who had a shop at Maple Street where Lindsey was last seen, said he wasn't even in Mcleary the night that Lindsey went missing. Said he was training as a volunteer EMT and couldn't possibly have been involved in her disappearance. But surveillance footage proved otherwise, as cameras picked up Tim Hartman at a store in Mcleary's buying something and then heading towards Maple Street where his shop is. Tim Hartman's property ended up being searched. It then comes to light that Tim had not only helped in the search for Lindsey, had Lindsey's mum, Melissa, in the car when they were searching, and yet somehow he had left this detail out. He had actually contacted Melissa that night in order to help. His excuse as to why he had left these details out of being in Mcleary was that he thought he had got back earlier and forgot about the rest of what he did that night. Tim Hartman is merely a person of interest at this point, however suspicious it seems. A $30,000 reward was put up for information leading to an arrest. Tim Hartman is no longer cooperative with the investigators. In 2017, hunters in eastern Washington in Kittitas County found remains of a skull in a deeply wooded area, which was about 3 hours from Mcleary. The rest of the remains could not be found. In 2018, the skull was tested, and a news conference confirmed it was Lindsey's skull that had been found. The award was put up to $40,000 to hopefully produce any new information, but obviously, with a lack of remains, there was no cause of death. In 2021, a Paul James Beaker, aged 50, was arrested for a kidnapping and rape. The young lady he did it to managed to free herself and escape. He was identified through a genealogy database after DNA was obtained from a discarded item. This has led the investigators to question if this man could be related to Lindsey Baum's murder. As in 2003, Paul Beaker lived in Mcleary, and what is strange is that there are 2 victims in a small logging town. Is it likely to be by the same man? However, I still think there's definitely something suspicious about Tim Hartman. In 2022, Paul Beaker was found guilty of first-degree kidnapping and rape of the teenager in 2003 and sentenced to 30 years. One day I hope Lindsey's mum Melissa and the town of Mcleary, who have never forgotten Lindsey, get the answers they need, and soon. Please like and subscribe for more content.